You know, I've been monitoring this story out of New York City with this EMT who was stabbed right in the ambulance outside of her hospital, Mount Sinai West in Manhattan, by somebody who appeared to have had a pre-planned attack, even though he's now going with a "I thought I was kidnapped" kind of defense for a number of reasons. Now, I've told you before, and I will repeat it here again, that the secret sauce of this channel, what I look for in a crime-related story, is whether or not this crime-related story is indicative of policy that can be changed, that hopefully in the future will end up preventing this from happening again. Also, sometimes there are personal connections to the story, which is one of the things that I'm going to get into throughout this story. But first, thank you to everybody who signed up over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to my podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
EMT, who police say was stabbed by a patient that she was treating in an ambulance, was released from the hospital today to cheers from her colleagues.
So first things first, I'm so happy that Julia Faughtum is on her way to recovery, that she's been released from the hospital, and that her fellow hospital staff gave her a standing ovation as she was wheeled out the door. Now, of course, it would have been much better for this to have not happened to this poor woman in the first place, but, you know, that is the state of New York City right now, and unfortunately, of course, bail reform and other policy failures ultimately led to the circumstances to which this young woman found herself in when she was attacked by this madman. And by the way, it's not just me saying this. The mother of the EMS worker who was stabbed inside her ambulance by a convicted felon last week blamed the state's bail reform for the savage attack and said, quote, "The Big Apple has failed its people." Cara Fatum Grant, the mother of the 25-year-old EMT Julia Fatum, wrote on Facebook that her daughter's accused assailant should have never been allowed to roam the streets, given his extensive criminal history. Fact, Rudolph Rudy Garcia, 48, of the Bronx, had 8 prior arrests, including criminal possession of a weapon, assault, menacing with a weapon, drugs, burglary, and assault on a police officer. Fatum Grant wrote in the Post. He has been released back into civilization 8 times. New York has failed its people, she added. How is your bail reform working? Now, obviously, I don't disagree with this woman at all, in any way, shape, or form, but I do want to add that she also thanked people who supported her daughter, not just on the GoFundMe, which is at $42,000 at the time of me recording this video, but for sending their kind words, their best wishes, and all that. By the way, the GoFundMe for this girl, who is still recovering, will be linked in the description of this video if you want to donate. But her message about bail reform is true. Her message about this criminal being released over and over and over again is solid. And the fact of the matter is, it used to be if you assaulted a police officer, if you assaulted somebody with a deadly weapon, if you threatened people, if you burglarized or whatever, those would be used as enhancements in order to make sure you don't see the sunlight for a very long time.
Julia Faughtum was discharged from Mount Sinai West following EMTs carried signs saying, "We're here from you." Fellow EMTs, I should say. Investigators say last week, patient Rudy Garcia pulled out a knife and stabbed Faughtum several times in the leg and stomach as their ambulance arrived at the hospital.
But this guy was allowed over and over and over again to be released, in part due to the fact that he committed some of these crimes in Manhattan. Let's be honest, DA Alvin Bragg's first memo said that he didn't want to put anybody in jail unless they murdered somebody or committed attempted murder, and he's kind of living up to that with the way that he's downgrading charges nearly 60% since he's took office, a big upgrade from the previous administrations in terms of downgraded felonies, and these are the results of those policies. And by the way, this isn't the first EMS or EMT worker to be attacked in this instance. In fact, the numbers are quite startling for the number of workers in this field being attacked this year in the city of New York. According to the FDNY, there have been 121 attacks on FDNY EMTs so far this year. Look, we're in July, and the fire department for the city of New York says that 121 of their EMTs are being attacked, which is not to be confused with the EMTs that work for hospitals, like, by the way, hey, I'm assuming this girl worked for because she's over at Mount Sinai. They would actually not be a related EMT organization. So the attacks are probably much, much more. And again, we're not even that far past the halfway mark during the course of the year. And what's even crazier about this is that this is a neighborhood that used to be really nice. And one of the reasons why I know for a fact that this neighborhood used to be really nice is because I would walk by this hospital every day for years as I attended university, because John Jay College of Criminal Justice, if we go to the Google map, has 2 buildings surrounding this area, located directly across the street from where this crime happened, and the main building of John Jay is located right across the street from the front entrance of this hospital. As you can see, the ambulance station is on 59th Street between 9th and 10th Avenue, and all you have to do is flip it around, and this was the North Hall building at John Jay College. Now, I remember they were thinking about selling this building at the time that I went there, so I don't know if they've actually done that at this point. I don't keep up with my university like that. But if you go down the street of this hospital, again, I walk this path each and every day, you would find the main building of John Jay College. And by the way, if you're a fan of certain TV shows and movies, a bunch of TV shows and movies were shot in this main building while I was going there, like The Blacklist, the new Annie remake, a bunch of other commercials and whatnot, all made here. The Following, that Kevin Bacon show, this was the school that he actually taught at in the show, even though they called it something different. So I could tell you for a fact, as somebody who passed by this area each and every day, it did not used to be like this. Crime did not just spontaneously happen. And as somebody who sometimes hangs out around in this area, I can tell you it's gotten significantly worse. It's definitely diminished in quality all the way around. In fact, I used to make a joke about the Daredevil series, which, by the way, takes place in Hell's Kitchen, which is just slightly south of this area. In fact, oftentimes I would go with my lady, who I met in college, to restaurants or bars over there because it was this up-and-coming area, honestly skewed a little to being a gay district of the city of New York. So when I watched the show Daredevil, I would laugh with all this talk of how this is a cesspool and this is a crime-ridden area and Daredevil's fighting all these mobsters and gangsters, because I would go to that area each and every day, and you know for a fact that Daredevil is based on a comic written in the 60s with primary issues in the 70s and 80s, because it was just not that way anymore. But the thing is, when I'm over there, I see the blight, I see the problems, I see the criminality, I see the sketchy folk that have occupied this area, and it's definitely gotten significantly worse. I would be perfectly fine, no caution at all whatsoever, walking the streets of this area in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, when people were exiting the bars, because that's how solid and safe it was. If you were to ask me as a female, I would obviously say, listen, don't be out late and all that. You might draw some unwanted attention and thus be targeted for criminality. But if you had to pick an area that used to be where this wouldn't happen, I would say a few years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, when I was in school over there, this would be a good area for that. It was populated with young people, not a lot of criminal types. It was brightly lit up, and you could not possibly imagine something like this happen. You could not possibly imagine a guy in an ambulance lying in wait, looking to injure somebody. But these incidents happen over and over and over again, and it's not just in the bad neighborhoods that you hear about, you know, like the one the Luke Cage takes place in, which is Harlem, which, by the way, was also pretty gentrified when I was going to school in Manhattan. Just goes to show you how much New York City has deteriorated since the George Floyd Black Lives Matter riots. But this was not how things were. This is not how it was operating. There was better times, and those better times are within the last couple of years. They're within my lifetime. This is not something that is unreachable. It's not a utopia. It's not me being idealistic or anything like that. This is basically how it was yesterday in the grand scheme of things, and I'm just saying we should go back to that yesterday. We should go back to that attitude that we had towards criminals a few years ago, because now we're seeing it happen to people who used to be perfectly fine, who used to work jobs that were pretty safe, that were pretty well respected, and even they are under threat in the most random of situations, and it's absolutely tragic.
Released in court today, the man accused of stabbing that EMT inside her own ambulance was arraigned. Among the evidence, that the defendant, Rudy Garcia, confessed, telling police that he thought he'd been kidnapped. Also, that he used a large kitchen knife, which was hidden hidden in his boot. Garcia charged with attempted murder and assault. The victim stabbed in the chest, arm, and leg, and she may have saved her own life by curling up to try to block her chest.
Look, I showed you that clip because people are going to say in the comments, people are going to say online, mental health, this is a mental health issue. You don't need to address it with the criminal justice system, mental health. But the thing is, mental health should not be used as an excuse to hand wave these terrible situations and not talk about them again. Unless you're in favor of changing the standard by which we commit people, which again now is when they're a danger to themselves or others, which has resulted in a dramatic decrease in people being put in involuntary commitment, then I don't want to hear you talk about mental health, because I know what you're doing. You're using it to obfuscate the very real problems that we're seeing surface based on the other stupid policies that people like you have advocated for. We used to have a system where if you couldn't take care of yourself and had nobody to take care of you, you could be committed. Maybe you don't think that's the correct standard, but we need something between that and where we're at now. And unless you actually want to change or have some kind of impact on the greatest policy change that led to these mentally unhealthy people being out on the streets in the first place, then I need you to shut up about mental health. This guy had a violent criminal record. The fact that he's saying something stupid and ridiculous does not necessarily mean that he has a mental health condition that rises to the level that completely obscures his responsibilities for this action. Now, I've heard that this woman wants to leave the city of New York. She's probably not going to be an EMT anymore. She might take that GoFundMe money and use that to go to nursing school and become a nurse somewhere else. So we're losing a productive person, a compassionate person, somebody who actually cares about other people, in that she was doing that for her living. She was helping other people in distress. She was actually interacting with those mentally health people that progressives only seem to bring up when they want to obfuscate responsibility for crimes in the criminal justice system that they have reformed to the point where they've become more common. And I feel bad that it's a loss of her in that field, but I do wish her well in the future. And again, I will link her GoFundMe in the description box of this video. Look, time and time again, we're told these myths about the American criminal, that they're these poor Aladdins that just need to have the root causes addressed, because honestly, they're kind-hearted and good people that are hardworking. That's just bad luck, and that was what led them to be criminals. But the reality betrays that narrative, because what do we see when we actually look at the victims of these crimes?
Faugham didn't speak, but her parents talked about learning what happened to their daughter.
It was something that no parent wants. It was terrifying because you really don't think that it's ever going to happen to you. Today we feel blessed that our girl is alive.
Those are the people who turn out to be working class, the people working in these stores that are being assaulted by these retail thieves. Those are the people who tend to be compassionate. Doesn't get more compassionate than becoming an EMT, an EMS worker, going out in an ambulance and trying to save people's lives on a day-to-day basis. And those are the people who are suffering these attacks. Over and over and over again, the good, kind people that were told by the progressive left would just turn to criminality as soon as circumstances just got a little bit worse. Those are the people being victimized by the criminals. And time again, we see that their very policies meant to protect those people who are being victimized end up enabling these repeat offenders, these people who have no compassion, no morals, no ethics, these people who will commit violence at the drop of a hat for some form of instant gratification, these people who are not Aladdin in any way, shape, or form. Those are the ones that the progressive policies actually help. This woman would have been okay. She would have been perfectly fine if we had a sensible bail law. If we had a law that said, you know what? You commit 8 assaults, you carry deadly weapons on you during the course of those crimes, you burglarize people, you harass people, you menace people, you commit all of these crimes, and you get held in jail. We actually put you behind bars. And if you have a mental health issue, then we put you in a mental health facility where you cannot leave, because we have to get you off the streets. This was not compassionate. There was nothing noble about this. There was nothing honorable about this. And this poor girl almost died because of it. But hey, those are just my thoughts. They happen to be 100% right in every possible way. But you can let me know if you disagree, your wrong opinion, down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show them by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on my social media. Support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about an EMS worker viciously attacked. Till next time.